market outlet as general manager as 91.9 WCLK FM and NPR public radio station licensed to Clark Atlanta University, now celebrating 51 years on the air. So congratulations to you. Mr. Teddy Aston went from the warehouse to the mailroom to Warner Brothers record boardroom. He was part of history that started a Black dynasty. And last but not least, Mr. David Linton, whose 40-year career encompasses journalism, radio broadcasting, and music marketing promotion. We thank you for your participation and contributions to Atlanta's community. We will open with each person introducing their current profession for 2 minutes, then dive into the topics conversation. You got 2 minutes to discuss your current profession, and then we'll go into the webinar.
Well, I guess I'll start alphabetically since I'm the D. My name is David Linton. I'm currently the program director of Jazz 91.9 FM, WCLK, Atlanta's jazz station. As you stated, I've been in the industry for 40 plus years in various capacities. Currently, as I said, program director, but prior to that, I also programmed and managed other public radio stations in Raleigh, North Carolina and Elizabeth City, North Carolina, and then spent 30 plus years in the music industry as a marketing executive at the senior level, holding senior vice president positions at Capitol and vice presidents at Arista, Polygram, which is now Island Def Jam. And I started my record career at Warner Brothers Records, and my first supervisor is one of our panelists today, Teddy Aston. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Good morning, David. Good morning. My name is Teddy Aston. Hopefully you can hear me.
We can hear you just fine, Teddy.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Good morning, Loretta. Good morning, everyone. It's great to see all the distinguished people on this panel. I'm happy to be here, and thank you for the invitation. Good morning, everybody. My name is Teddy Aston. I spent 20 years at Warner Brothers Records. Like your introduction stated, Loretta, I started in the warehouse, went to the mailroom, promoted to the mailroom, and eventually to the Warner Brothers boardroom in Burbank, California. During those years, we spent over 20 years building the Warner Brothers Black music dynasty. And just to give you an idea of the artists that we promoted, marketing, and developed, includes Quincy Jones, his artist, Tevin Campbell and James Ingram, Patty Austin, along with Bob Marley, Sly and the Family Stone, Larry Graham when he went solo from the Sly and the Family Stone, Donna Summer, Sylvester, Shaka Khan, Ashford Simpson, George Benson, the Funkadelics, Bootsie's Rubber Band, Rod Stewart, Ice-T, Biz Marquis, Big Daddy Kane, Michael McDonald, Albie Shore, Karen White, George Benson, Earl Klugh, Bob James, Foreplay, featuring Bob James, Lee Ritenour, Nathan East, and Harvey Mason, along with Al Jarreau, David Sanborn, Ronald Isley when he went solo from the Isley Brothers, Joe Sample, Rose Royce, Frankie Beverly, Jennifer Holliday, Keith Washington, Atlantic Star, Jasmine Guy, the Force MDs, Club Nouveau, the Tom Tom Club, just to name a few. After that, I opened up a nightclub at Underground Atlanta called Teddy's Live, where we feature some of the best jazz artists of all times. Now, I'm the president of TLA Real Estate Consulting, where we specialize in loan modifications, forbearance agreements, and foreclosure prevention for homeowners who may be affected by some type of hardship that's causing them to be delinquent on their mortgage payments. And just to kind of give you an idea of the criteria that qualifies homeowners for a loan modification, which includes, but not just limited to, having a financial hardship, whether you was working full time when you purchased your home, now you're working part time, or you're not making the money that you was making when you purchased your home. Two incomes reduced to one. Also, along with two incomes reduced to one, the loss of a loved one that was contributing to the mortgage home expenses. So those are just a few of the criteria that qualifies homeowners for a loan modification. And Loretta, these days, if a homeowner lose their home, it'll almost be impossible for them to ever be able to afford another home. So we're here. We're not selling homes. We're not buying homes. We're helping homeowners maintain their homes and create that generational wealth. So uh, that's in a nutshell, basically what we're doing here presently at TLA Real Estate Consulting.
Okay, thank you so very much for that information, Teddy. And I'm sure that the audience can really use that information in the trying times that we're having currently. So we want to go ahead and go with
Okay,
Mr. Jamal.
if I may, Loretta, mention one other thing. I'm also the author of a new book called
No, no,
A
no.
Golden Past and a Platinum Future. And I must tell everybody that Loretta has purchased over 10 books, 10 of my books, that she's given to her friends and colleagues throughout the industry. And we really do appreciate that, Loretta.
Okay, now I appreciate your information, and we're going to get into the gist of everything that you've done, and I really appreciate you contributing as much as you has to Atlanta. But we're going to move on and be in the moment with everyone giving out what they need to give out, and I do appreciate you doing what you have done in Atlanta. You're an exceptional man, and we really respect you highly. So, Mr. Achman, I would like to hear more from you, please. 2 minutes.
Yes,
Thank you
thank
so
you so much, Loretta. And just a quick kind of notation. I am kind of blown away that I did not know that Teddy owned Teddy's Live, because I actually used to go to
much.
Teddy's Live when I was younger and used to think I was a grown man, but that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm down in Atlanta.
that is quintessential Atlanta. But my name is Jamal Ahmed. I am the host of the Soul of Jazz at Jazz 91.9 WCOK. This year is my 30th anniversary hosting the show and being at WCOK. The foundation of my show has always been jazz music, but it's also been about exploring other styles in Black music, be it soul music, be it tinges of hip hop, be it tinges of house music, Latin music, African music, and classic soul, along with other styles. I've been doing this show, like I said, for 30 years, and now we are syndicated in over 33 markets across America via the African American Public Radio Consortium. And we want to thank Miss Loretta Rucker up there in Brooklyn, New York, for all that she does. I've also worked with KPDU out in Prairie View, A&M University out in Prairie View, Texas. I consult with them as well as Jazz FM in London. And when I started at WCLK, I created a wonderful kind of artistic collective called the Groovement that included artists like India.Arie, Donnie, Anthony David, many artists who went on to win Grammys and do big things in the music industry. I also have a band called the Dangerfield Newbies that I produce. I've been putting out music since 2014. We've had music featured on television and licensed all over the world. And I also just completed a documentary called Stepping Into Tomorrow. So I've stepped into filmmaking, and I worked with a wonderful gentleman by the name of Jason Orr. We did a story on jazz fusion and how jazz fusion post 1960 changed the way of the world musically. So that's me in a nutshell with a few other bits.
All right, thank you so much for that information. Miss Wendy Williams, can you please tell us all about you, please?
Absolutely. Well, I would begin with saying hello, everyone. My foray into my professional career began at a country music station. It was the first job I could get, so I took it because I knew I was going to, have a career in communications somehow. I had preferred television news, and from that radio station, I went into TV news as a production assistant and worked my way up to a news producer for the 6 and 11 o'clock news with aspirations, and this was in Pittsburgh, PA, with aspirations to become a news anchor. But that didn't quite happen because I got unsettled so quickly in terms of my restlessness. I wanted to get out there and start working. And then friends of mine were moving to DC. I decided to move to DC at that time. Couldn't find work. So I was headed back to go back to school. And I ended up at Morgan State University in Baltimore, which is about an hour from DC. I relocated there and I was going to register for my master's classes, but got sidetracked when I met someone standing in a line who said, "We've got some radio jobs over at WEAA, which is like the sister station to WCLK." So I went in there. Started from the bottom. Basically, I was a membership assistant. By the time I had left, I was the assistant station manager. It was a wonderful foray into now what I call public radio and that non-commercial aspect of communications. And I just fell in love with it. So I worked there diligently, and then the call came that CLK was looking to hire both a program director and a general manager. And I thought, well, I'll just go ahead and apply. I don't really want it. I don't want to relocate to Atlanta, right? But anyway, I got the job only because I knew I didn't want it. I didn't want to leave the family and the friends that I knew in that mid-Atlantic region. And that was the only reason why I didn't want to come down to Atlanta. But anyway, I took the job. And with that in my mind, I'll stay 2 years, get some experience and go back. I got the job as general manager. And I've worked there now for 31 years. Can you believe that? I
Yes.
can't believe it. I have to pinch
And
myself sometimes, but it's just been by the grace of God, I have to say. I love what I do. I love that our university community is infectious. I love that the Atlanta community is infectious. I love that we have built an enterprise, empire, if you will, that has a touch point in every Atlanta, organization, business, what you name it, politics, we're there. People know who we are. We have partnerships and all kinds of community engagement activities where we're all over the place. And I just love that. I love the energy that we give to the city, being the jazz of the city. So that is currently where I am. I also chair the African American Public Radio Consortium, and I recently joined the Friends of Georgia Radio recently. So that's
Right.
pretty much where I am and what I've been doing.
Okay, thank you so very much. That's very intriguing and interesting. So I really appreciate that information. So we're going to talk with the radio lady, Miss Washington George. She's known around Atlanta as the radio lady. So tell us about you, Marsha, please.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me today on the panel. I was raised by one of the first Black radio pioneers in the United States. His name was Ken Knight. He opened WERD as the program director in 1949 on Auburn Avenue. That was the first Black, at the time, Jack Gibson called Jockey Jack, later to be called Jack the Rapper. Jack was the announcer. He went on the air and said, "Hello, Atlanta, we are here." And Ken Knight remained as the program director for several years at WERD Word, which stood for Get the Word Out. I had that influence, and then I was also a writer from age 9 years old. And when I was at Bethune-Cookman, they were looking for someone to name the call letters for the new radio station, WBCC. And I won the contest. I named the station Wonderful Black Challenging Change. And the award was a Superfly album and a Rare Earth album, which I still have both of them today. Some people don't know what albums are now. I have been very active in a lot of radio groups, even though my career for his employment was with AT&T. I'm a retired network engineering project manager, so I worked on the circuits that carried the networks and the airlines and the ATMs and things of that sort. So that's my technological skill. I have dabbled a little bit with radio on the internet side. However, as a historian, I prefer to stay on the writing side. I have a book, Black Radio Winner Takes All, and a new release book entitled The Encyclopedia of Black Radio, and we're still taking in new biographies as we go along with this fundraiser for scholarships for minorities in broadcasting. Currently, I am the vice president of the National office of the National Black Radio Hall of Fame. And I work with Hurricane Dave as the assistant to the National Induction Program. And our next induction will be in Charlotte, North Carolina. I do a lot of things. I've worked on the book with one of the first dancers who was with James Brown, Miss Tasha Houston. And I was a ghostwriter for several other books. But my radio background with organizations has been with the YBPC Scholarship Committee, the NBPC Scholarship Committee. And then in 2010, Bernie Hayes called me in to start the Atlanta chapter of the National Black Radio Hall of Fame. And we have really grown. We've had 2 of our inductions in Atlanta and 2 of our inductions in St. Louis, and next year, of course, as I mentioned, in Charlotte, North Carolina. But we're looking for more members to come in and be active with us because we're trying our best to open a museum here in Atlanta. And that's something we can discuss later on this call if you would like. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so very much. But since you're talking about WERD, I would like to know what aspect of WERD radio motivated your enthusiasm and inspired your passion.
My passion after I moved to Atlanta in 1979 was to actually see the call letters still hanging on Auburn Avenue at the time with WERD on it. And I said, oh, that's where Uncle Kenneth used to work. Oh, I love this. I love this. And I took pictures and so forth. I also found out that the station had closed down. So when we got the National Black Radio Hall of Fame started in 2014 in Atlanta, we started the internet station. So if you go to live365.com, we have a WERD radio format. And that is to try and do what they did. We're still grooming it some so that we can do more talk radio on the format as well. And that would put us right into place as to things that WERD broadcasted in its heyday. But my influence was my uncle, his peers that I met at the Jack the Rapper convention, who gave me their story and told me since I was a writer that they would trust me to write their book. And now I'm working on a documentary entitled 13 Plus. And that will cover WERD as well. And I also worked on a documentary with Allie Pat, who my uncle hired and put into radio at WERD in 1950. So WERD is my heart. I own the copyright and the trademark to it on behalf of the Atlanta chapter.
Well, thank you so much for that information. Mr. Jamal Achman, your mom, Dr. Ruby Bird, was very supportive in getting you started. Can you tell us how important her support was building your current portfolio and legendary accomplishments? Unmute yourself, please.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, I can. Did you hear my question?
Okay. Yes, I did. Yes, I did,
All right,
Loretta. Thank you for that question, Loretta. I think all of us, it goes without saying how impactful our parents and our mothers and fathers are. But I have to say, my mother uh, was a one of a kind, a Renaissance woman. That was an example not just for greatness in the world of academia, but also in art. My mother, was from Greenville, Georgia, which is a small town in West Georgia, and she became mayor of her hometown at the age of 50. But my mother came to Atlanta, went to Clark Atlanta University, and quickly became a lieutenant under Dr. C.T. Vivian, who was one of Dr. King's lieutenants, and he actually explored more of the educational side of the civil rights movement and helped create the Upward Bound program, which my mother was a director of at Clark College at the time. And then she became the director at Morehouse College in 1990. But one thing about my mother that I absolutely love was she had this incredible love of knowledge, but she also had an incredible love of art. And we're talking about radio. Some of my fondest memories of radio are actually riding the car with my mother, and some of the songs that she would play But then she would also do things like take us to all of the plays and take us to a lot of the Black arts functions that were here in Atlanta to make sure that we understood how important culture is to all of us, not just us individually, but us as a community. And my mother also started her own boutique record label in 1984, Paradigm Records, which really inspired me as a 9-year-old in 1984, who was a burgeoning musician and inspired me to explore music more. So I love that about my mom. The fact that she was not as stoic as most academics, because the academics are naturally stoics, but she had a heart. She had a very big heart, and her influence not only can be felt through me and my siblings and my family, but through countless individuals that she's touched in the world.
And with that being said, with the panelists that are currently here, we all are geared toward music in one form or another. And I think that is the intricate pieces in our lives that help us to cope through certain situations that we encounter from day to day. So Miss Wendy Williams, Miss Wendy F. Williams, my apologies. With your exceptional perseverance and vision, what stands out as your favorite achievement in building Black radio?
Just that you have the authority and the provision to make decisions that shape your community. So when I think of that, I think about when I first arrived at WCLK. This was in '94, and I made a decision that about, I think it was the spring of '95. I made a decision to air a program that I really didn't know how people were going to take, but the program was a live feed from the Million Man March. As y'all remember, back in 1995, that was a phenomenal event. It had never been done before, and it was such a huge and phenomenal success. I worked with a former colleague in Baltimore, because it was in, I think, the DC area, but it was a colleague who had worked at the time at Sheraton Broadcasting. And he said, "Do you want to take a live feed?" So we're a jazz music station, right? So I really wasn't quite sure how that was going to play, but I said, "Go ahead, we'll do the live feed," and we broadcast or actually streamed that program that was carried by Sheridan then for about 6 hours. We carried the whole thing, and people just called and loved it. So I knew then that I had made the right decision, and that gave me the impetus to continue making bold and daring decisions.
All
But
right,
that
thank you.
was one of my first ones. Yeah.
That's great. I remember those these things that we're talking about. I think with lived experiences, you remember and you have the visions of those memories as we talk about those events. So I do recall that Million Man March, and it was like phenomenal for Black men to come together and to be at that level of unity. Mr. Linton, David Linton, looking back on your career as a major record executive, what artists made you feel proud of their development under your leadership?
Well, thank you. I hope none of them are listening, so somebody think I'm biased, but I've been blessed to work with so many. I've been accountable for over 100 million units sold with various artists. But I must say, to being involved with the early career of Usher, I think Usher is definitely one of the proudest. Taking him on one of his first program, his tour, and he was just a preteen, just getting started, and he had such poise and such charisma that we took him to an event, and it rained, and he was on stage. And I've seen seasoned artists say, "Stop the music, I can't hear the track," but Usher didn't do that. It rained, he continued to sing, the audio went out, but he never stopped, he never flinched. When the audio came back, he was right where he was supposed to be. And I looked at his mother, Janetta, and I said, "You know what? He's special, and he's going to be big." And we now know he's one of the biggest stars in the world. And then I have to say, this weekend, I have two of my former artists both going into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That's Salt and Pepper. with the first rap group to have a multi-million platinum artist. Me and my team at Polygram, which is now Island Def Jam, worked at, and then and Outkast, which was under the LaFace, which was a joint venture with Arista Records when I was vice president. So we helped develop those careers early. So to have both of those artists this weekend going into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame definitely stands out special. But as Teddy said, us working together, we worked on so many artists. It's really hard to kind of pinpoint, but just because of the Now and the Atlanta connection, I'd have to say Usher and Outkast, and then of course Salt and Pepper, because they were the first female group to have a multi-platinum success.
And remember, no, I'm sorry. What I'm trying to say is that WRFG was the first station to drop Outkast's first single from LaFace record with Supercalifragilistic.
Yeah.
And
I still can't. It's still hard for me to even pronounce that name, but I remember that project. And then, of course, if you look over my shoulder, you see TLC. So there's just so many. But yeah.
But I was trying to say that all those groups that you just named in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, we as WRFG, we tapped into each individual group and gave them their props early on, because we were the type of station that would play music before it was a mainstream song. So we would break a lot of records in that respect. So Teddy, last but not least, Mr. Teddy Aston, you are a man dedicated himself to helping people from being an entertainment promoter to saving home mortgages. Why is servicing people important to you? Did music promotion play a role for these services? Unmute yourself, Teddy. Thank you. You there?
Yes, yes. Being in the music industry, you develop a lot of passion for a lot of people, a lot of artists that you work with. One of the most gratifying experiences that I had working in the music industry was taking Prince on his first promotional tour. Long story short, requested that Warner Brothers send Prince to Charlotte, North Carolina, where I was based at the time. And they said, no, Teddy, we don't think it's a good idea. I said, why not? They said, well, he doesn't talk. Well, if he doesn't talk, then it may be more of a turnoff to people than it is. It may not be a good idea. And I convinced Warner Brothers that it would be a good idea. I meet Prince at the airport. He said, hey, Teddy, I heard a lot about you. I'm really looking forward to meeting and working with you. When we finished with the promotional tour there in Charlotte, we were there to raise food for the homeless shelters. And he only had one request. He said, Teddy, after we finish this promotional tour, he said, would you take me to the movies? I said, sure, I'll take you to the movies. I said, what you want to see? He said, Superman. You got it. Let's go see Superman. In fact, he thanked me on his second album for taking him out on his first promotional tour. Another gratifying experience I had was taking Bob Marley on his last promotional tour. But all of those stories are in my book. My passion for helping people really developed over the years, and I think I got that passion from my mom. My mom was a very passionate person, single parent, raising us, and that carried me through my life. And just to be able to help people save their homes is a blessing. It's a blessing to be able to help people in those situations, because when we were growing up, people losing their homes, we didn't know why. But when President Obama was elected president in 2008, the real estate market was in a deep crisis. My wife was a real estate broker at the time, and all the people that was buying homes, all of a sudden was losing their homes because so many people qualified for home. I mean, so many people was given mortgages that they really didn't qualify for homes. The only criteria you needed at the time to buy a home was to look in the mirror. If you could see yourself in the mirror, you qualified to buy a home. So when the market crashed, President Obama was president, and they decided, and President Obama introduced the country to the Making Homes Affordable program. And also, the banks had loaned so many people bad loans, the banks was going broke. So the motto was from the government was the banks are too big to fail. I'm sure a lot of people remember that phrase
Yeah.
that came from the White House. The banks are too big to fail. Well, if the banks are too big to fail for loaning people these bad loans, what about the homeowners? Who's going to help them? So I went to some of the mortgage companies and they told me, hey, have you heard about loan modification? Because at that time, only the rich people knew about loan modification. The white people, the celebrities, athletes, you know? So I found out what the criteria was for loan modification for the FHA, the VA, the HUD, conventional investors, as well as the USDA investors. So once I found out what the criteria was, it didn't matter who your servicer was for your loan because the rules apply to everyone. But when a lot of people tried to do their own loan modifications, they were turned down. So I get calls every day from people, and the loan modifications that we do is for people all over the country. We're not just doing loan modification for people here in Atlanta and Georgia. When we do our radio interviews and marketing, we get calls from all over the country. So that developed my passion for helping people when they started losing their homes. The banks are too big to fail, but what about the homeowners? So that was our passion, and that was our goal to help as many people as possible.
Well, thank you for that information. And actually, with the crisis that we have endured over the years as in the U.S. with the civil rights movement, 9/11, George Floyd, Sonia Massey, Breonna Taylor, can you all recall where you were during those social crisis moments? It's an open forum question. But
I
Mr.
remember
Lincoln,
when I was at AT&T working on some circuits, and one of the clerks called me and said, I can't get this roof for you to complete because a plane just hit the building in New York, and small planes hit the buildings there often, well, sometimes. And I said, how do you know? And he said, I have a small television in my cubicle. So I went down to his floor to look at it on television. By that time, the second one had hit. And I went to my district manager and I said, we need to get the employees out of here. And he said, well, it's Osama bin Laden doing this, which I had never heard the name before. And I said, okay, ex-military man, how do we get the employees out of here without it being a big riot for us running out? And so he called New Jersey, and we decided to do it, release the employees one floor at a time. And the reason why it was important that we evacuated is that the ATF building was right in front of our building, and the FBI building was on the right-hand side. And we weren't far from the Peachtree Airport. So we didn't know who they were targeting. And we just had to get out there, take our laptops and work from home. It was, of course, it was a sad time, but it touched me emotionally because I had a lot of circuits coming out of New York on projects. And the project managers from New York were calling, crying, canceling their projects until a later date because they had family members and friends who were in the building. And it was just very, very hard to keep getting those calls over and over again till we had to just stop, pray, and put as many circuits other than emergency circuitry on hold until everybody could deal emotionally with the particular situation. That's as much as I can tell you that's not confidential.
that's okay. Anybody else have a experience between the civil rights 9/11 and that George Floyd when we were sitting at the house in the pandemic and the television was playing over and over and over the George Floyd situation. So how did that impact you all just sitting in that moment?
Well,
Well,
for
I
me, it
think,
was unbelievable. I mean, just to be able to see a
Yeah.
policeman having his knee on George Floyd's neck and another one with his knee on his back, it was just unbelievable. And I had to see that 2 or 3 times just to realize that what was really going on. And hopefully we'll never see something like that again. But that really not only moved me, it moved the whole nation. It started a new movement. So during that era, I was able to be able, and that's another thing, Loretta, that helps me develop my passion for helping people because
Mhm.
you never want to see anything like that again. So
But
it was,
well,
as radio personalities, Mr. Linton and Jamal and Wendy, as radio personalities, what influence did the listeners have in those moments? How did you control the radio environment musically or commentarily to keep the listeners from running out in the streets rioting? How did you manage that,
Well, I
Mr.
will say this,
Linton?
during COVID, you were right when you said that on, the news coming from your TV every day was about the deaths and the suffering caused by COVID, the uncertainty of COVID. And we made a conscious decision at CLK to be a balm, to be a healing balm for the community, because we were playing music and we
Right.
didn't talk about it. It became for us like a safe place that you can come and just listen to some good music and we could stir your soul while people were just getting just terrible news. We also started working with AARP during this time, and they were doing these couch concerts because people couldn't get out of their homes. Elderly people couldn't get out of their homes. So we were a major partner with them for the couch concert series, which allowed them to go online and stay at home and watch shows. But we made a cautious decision to give information where you can get help. Who was doing research, who was doing vaccines, where you could go get, anything that helped uplift the community because it was a sad, and a really scary time. So I like the fact that we can curtail our programming at a moment's notice, when we need to, when we know what's going on in our environment, when we know what's going on in our community. I know Jamal played the first time I heard Gregory Porter was the 1960 What song. And I love that because it has so much meaning and that tied to the civil rights movement. And so many other of his songs have some meaning with the civil rights movement. The one we are playing now, as you all will attest to this crazy political climate that we're in, that I heard one of our announcers play was Winter in America, by Gil Scott Heron. And I'm like, that's spot on. And who knew then that that song would have this kind of relevance now? So again, I like that we can shift programming and insert programming that helps our community.
I
And
want to piggyback on what Wendy just said because it's the power of the DJ. The DJ was the first superstar in our communities. And when I think about 9/11 and we think about George Floyd, I happen to be living in Los Angeles doing Rodney King. And so those two events kind of parallel, but it was always, you saw the images on TV, but I remember the DJs at KGLH, which is owned by Stevie Wonder, which is right there on Crenshaw. We're all in the heart of South Central, but it was the DJs who kept the peace. It was the DJs that helped keep the peace when Dr. King got killed, when, it was the Black DJs, it was the Black DJ that helped propel the civil rights movement. So every time we have one of those events, as much as we look at radio, and we look at television, we have social media, radio and Black radio was still the number one source and number one medium for African Americans. And we rely on our radio station for the information. And as Wendy say, for calming. So, this panel is about the Black DJ. And I wanted to just say that because all of those things that are tragedies we still touch the heart of our communities through Black radio. And as Wendy said, the music, et cetera. So just wanted to put that out there from my experience. And
Yes,
I'm a native New York, so I was the Twin Towers. I saw them being built, and I never thought I'd ever see them come down.
Yes, exactly. So Jamal, speaking of music and the Black DJ and us being able to maintain an audience, emotional unrest, you always use a theme. And the theme behind the music you choose is, what is the feelings you hope to share with your listeners when you share a particular song? I remember you breaking India Irie into the business. Um, and her music is so phenomenal and it touches the soul. So how did you take music and make it more listener inclusive?
Well, I think that's a very wonderful question, Loretta, because it really gets to the crux of the matter, the heart of the matter, with what are we here for as programmers, as artists, as executives? What are we really here for? And I think the when you boil it all down, it's here to enrich the souls of the people, to not only entertain them, but to really make the people feel fulfilled and make life worth living. That sounds very deep when you think about it, but that's really what it's about. When an artist goes into a studio, when a songwriter sits down and sits at a piano and creates a song, they're thinking about how do you affect people. So we in the radio industry, we're doing the same thing. And I remember when I started my show back in 1995, and the program director at the time, actually the general manager at the time, called me into his office and said, "We're going to change the name of your show to Soul, and we're going to name it after the old Ellis Heslip show that was on PBS." David, of course, David Linton remembers that show fondly because I'm not from the New York area, but it showed in the New York area in the 1970s. But you can actually see all the old episodes on Tubi actually right now. But that show is very phenomenal. I didn't know anything about it, so I took the name Soul and I personalized it as it sounds of universal love. And that was always the ethos, the foundation of everything that I played, from all the artists. I remember hearing India Arie for the very first time and going like, something special about you, or hearing Kim for the first time, or Lettucey for the very first time as an independent artist. I think that's one thing too about WCLK is we support a lot of independent artists. As you know, Loretta, in your time in radio, supporting independent artists is so very important because independent artists right now are the lifeblood of the music industry. And also you get that sincere soulfulness from that independent artist. So that is really what it's all about for us. And as David said, and as Wendy said during the pandemic, our job was to heal people. I specifically remember the songs that I was playing during the pandemic. It's very special songs because I was very particular in making sure that these songs touch people. And I have to say that artists were just really on it at that time, creating music that could really affect people in a deeper way and make people forget about what was happening at large. So it's very important for us to all remember that radio is, of course, the median for a message. And the message should always be love. The message should always be about unity. The message should always be about community. And the message should always be about making sure that this art form that was created by African Americans in this country, is supported and supported in a way that will continue to support the listening audience and make them feel fulfilled. My daughter, she listens to radio now and has the same feelings I had when I first heard radio in the 1970s. So it's an ongoing thing, and we just have to keep that movement going for another generation.
Yes, like I said previously in my introduction, that radio is like an audio journalist. We're like reporters, we're educators, we're comforters, we're everything that a community could use in order to survive. Because our radio, Black radio, is like a sense of survival. We are that carrot that comes into their lives on a daily basis and give them what they need to succumb those moments in time and during their day. Because we have so many things that we are oppressed with, that we deal with that, makes us, in a sense, vulnerable to the conditions of America, but we still sustain. And because of Black radio and the caring DJs on our airwaves, that makes a difference for all of us. And we're going to go into another question.
Loretta, if I may,
Yeah.
Loretta, if I may make one more comment during the pandemic. Had it not been for the pandemic, I probably never would have had a chance to write my book because things were very slow for me and my business at the time. And basically, I've had photos of my career over the last 20 years, and I had all of those photos digitized. And it really gave me a chance to sit down and write the book. And the premises of my book was I was turning 65 years old. I'm blessed to be 70 now, but I was turning 65. And I wanted to write the book to let people know that most people, when they turn 65, they're winding down. But I'm winding up at 65. And if it had not been for the pandemic, I probably never would have had a chance to write this book. And thanking Marsha Washington George for also helping me and getting my book published on Amazon.
I want to reflect back on the Million Man March when I think that was a call of duty from Farrakhan. Was that right? When the
Yes, it
Farrakhan
was.
Yes, it
nation
was. Yeah.
to
Yes, he
call?
did. I think he did. Yes,
Yeah.
Yes, it
he
was.
made that
And
call. That's what was kind of controversial, but no, yeah, he made it was a lot of great speakers that had the gave presentations that day that were very powerful.
well, do
And
you
if I
recall?
could comment on that, because I was actually there at the Million Man March,
Mhm.
and I recall that day. And I think it's so important for us to remember that because we are experiencing now the 30th anniversary. And when I went to the Million Man March, I literally had just started at WCLK a couple of months before, in September. But one thing about the Million Man March that I always tell people is if you weren't there, you do not understand the spirit of unity that exists in the air. To this day, I have never experienced a day in America like I did at the Million Man March. I saw so many things, so many moments that would just you can't even put them into words. I never forget, and I'll just give a couple of anecdotes, but I never forget there was a woman selling snacks and she had all this money in her hand and it was very windy and all that money just blew out of her hands. There was just money everywhere. And she knew she had just lost everything. Every single man that was there ran and grabbed every single dollar of hers and walked it right to her.
Mm.
I've never seen anything like that in my life. Or when there was a gentleman trying to get to the front of the crowd who was in a wheelchair and he could not make it through the crowd. They literally lifted this man up and passed him over the entire crowd to the very front. And that's just some of the things that I saw during that day. And we have to talk about that day a little bit more. And I'm so glad that Wendy brought that up because I was so proud of that moment when WCLK broadcast the Million Man March. I was actually a student at Morehouse and took off to school that day to travel up to DC with a group of men who all went to Morehouse, and we all took that charter bus, and it was absolutely phenomenal. And we have to remember that, of course, was organized by Minister Farrakhan, and there were so many organizations around it, so many people that came together to make that day absolutely beautiful. And the music, there was. I remember the music at the Million Man March. Everything that was played was classic soul, positive hip hop. You heard a lot of Curtis Mayfield at the Million Man March. I definitely remember that. And that just goes to show how powerful music is in our lives and how it always is like parallel and reflective of those special moments.
Right. And
Yeah, I want
just
to
to put a
Absolutely.
pin on this one to answer the question that's in the chat, the lessons that we can learn from and we can take from the Million Man March is that, put down the barriers and we have to come together. We all have different opinions on things, but we have one goal. And I think the sense of community has to be reinvigorated in our communities because of the times we are in. And it was something that WCLK did with the other radio stations in our community in Atlanta, where we joined Black Radio United for the Vote. We forgot about our formats and we forgot about the competition, but we all came together for the good of the people. And that's what we have to do. All our organizations, we have different organizations. They have the same goal, but different methods. And that's what Dr. King did, even with the March on Washington. So the March on Washington gave birth to the Million Man March. And now it's time for us to continue those kinds of things. Unity in the community, as we used to say back in the day. That's what we need.
So basically, we kind of over time a little bit, but I do want to say that generational of time, but we still have to maintain the basic, the concept of unity within our own communities. We have a tribe within a tribe, which is the families supporting and the community supporting. So that's a tribe within a tribe. But I have to kind of go into closing this out because we're over time slightly, but I do appreciate all of you being on this panel. And
We've been extended. We've been extended to 11:40. It's in the chat.
Okay, my bad.
And there's another question too.
It's so interesting. It's so interesting. And I didn't want to go over the time, but before we close out, I also want to ask you that how do you choose which tracks are most relevant for your audience as DJs in radio? If the music
I want to say something before you go into that.
You can go ahead, Marsha. What was your comment?
On the pandemic affected the National Black Radio Hall of Fame because we had just started having our first induction in 2019 here in Atlanta. We had planned on having our second induction program in 2020, and we couldn't because of the pandemic. So we said, well, next year we'll have the induction. Well, in 2021, we still had the pandemic going on. So we decided to do a Zoom induction program, and we hired an engineer who was a Zoom engineer out of Orlando, Florida. And we inducted our members via Zoom, and it's on the website, NBRHOF, where you can still see that recording of individuals across the country who we inducted. And Ted Aston was one of the members that we inducted into the National Black Radio Hall of Fame during the pandemic. So during the pandemic, we had to figure out our own workaround in order to keep something that we were starting as a tradition going forward. And piggybacking back to WERD real quick, I meant to mention that WERD was not initially on Auburn Avenue. It was on 30 Broad Street, which is near the location where Underground Atlanta is now. But when Mr. Blayton bought the station, he was not allowed to use the restrooms because they didn't allow, as they said, colored people to use the restrooms. So they said, you can buy the station, but you can't come into the building because we don't allow you to use the restroom. And that's when he went to the Masonic Lodge and left the space there. There's a story that Martin Luther King hit the ceiling to have the radio station put the mic down, and that's not a true story. The ceilings were too tall. He was in the front of the building on the first floor. The radio station was on the second floor in the back of the building. And I don't know how that story got started, but I got the word from Andy Young that was not true, and that during that time Martin Luther King was a very, very young man, so he didn't have a problem with either getting on the elevator, going to the back to the radio station, or climbing upstairs. That's my spiel.
Okay, thank you. But what I want to say about the pandemic, we all lived in fear. Fear was, we didn't even know from one second to the next. We were in a state of mind where we were afraid to even breathe.
Yeah.
But we were able to pull ourselves together within our community, and radio has been always in every crisis or every situation we have encountered, from civil rights to the pandemic. Black radio has been that key for everyone to survive all those crises that we endured. And WERD was the first radio, true enough. But over time, over decades and decades of radio broadcasting, there have been personalities such as Jamal, David, and Wendy, and Teddy and you that have contributed to Black radio to make it as successful as it has been. So I want to say also that as we close this conversation, you all have given so much of your presence, not just your voices, impacted various communities nationwide. Briefly state in 2 minutes how people can reach you. Briefly state in 2 minutes how people can reach you and what you're doing now currently. 2 minutes, please.
Well, I'll kick it off.
Yeah,
I will say, well, you can reach me at WCLK at dlinton at cau.edu. I'm also on social media, the Linton Kid on Instagram, and David C. Linton on Facebook, and also on LinkedIn. And so that's how you can stay in contact with me. And I think to answer the question in the chat, we can keep our communities connected to the airways and journalism by using technology. WCLK, for example, can be heard on our apps. We're on at WCLK.com. We can be heard on the internet. We can be heard on your mobile device through our app. And I think that's the way we have to continue. We have to push people to the new technologies. And one thing that Wendy did not say, and I'll say since it's within my 2 minutes, WCOK was the first station to start using streaming on HD channels. We were the very first to do that before any of our commercial counterparts. So again, under her leadership and WCOK's innovation, we were the first to break that barrier. So that's what we have to do, continue to find new ways to use new technologies to keep the airways open so that our journalistic instincts in terms of sharing information perseveres. And so I want to thank Auburn Avenue for having this panel and for having me.
Thank you. Jamal, you may go ahead.
Yes. First of all, thank you so much, Loretta, for having us. I thank the Auburn Research Avenue Library for having us as well. We thank you all for what you do in the community. It goes without, it should not go without saying that we cannot acknowledge what you do for the community. You can find me at Jamal Ahmed, or J Ahmed, AHMAD, at cau.edu. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I am all over the social media spectrum. But you can also find me at WCLK every weekday from 2 to 7 p.m. And weekends with the Saturday evening edition of the Soul of Jazz, which is nationally syndicated from 6 to 9 p.m. I also have my band, the Dangerfield Newbies. We've been putting out some incredible music this year. We're putting out our next album next year, which is entitled Sonic Salve. We're talking about music being a balm, being a salve. That is our musical ethos. And also, we are looking forward, myself and Jason are looking forward to releasing our documentary, Stepping Into Tomorrow, featuring Roy Ayers, George Duke, Al Jarreau, Larry Rosen from GRP, DJ Jazzy Jeff, so many luminaries telling the story of jazz fusion post 1960. And yeah, I am. You can find me DJing too in the city. I DJ at Block and Drum. I'll be there this Saturday actually from 6 to 9. So I do a few things.
Congratulations. Thank you so much. Wendy, go with you next, please. Tell us how.
Well, thank you so much for allowing us to be a part of this panel. I enjoyed my career and what I do so much that, you hear the phrase that if you enjoy what you do, it's not like work at all. And I say working with my colleagues, David and Jamal and the rest of our team, being on the campus of Clark Atlanta University has been so enriching. We see students every day. We hope we're pouring into them as well with our training programs. And it's just been a sheer delight. I think the most amazing thing about it is that we're in a business where we can affect people. And there's nothing better than that, than to be able to affect the outcomes in your community. And so that's why we're always putting out good information, good music, great information with the great music that we play. So I'm so happy to serve in this Atlanta market, and now around the world because of what David just said, that we're streaming all over the world. I too want to let you know you can reach me the old-fashioned way in my office at 404 880-8274, or email wwilliams@cau.edu. I'm on other social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and others as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Marsha, how can we reach you, please?
Okay, you can reach me with email radio profiles with the S on the end at gmail.com. And you can submit your bio. I know I do not have Wendy's and Jamal's bio in order to have you included in the National Black Radio Hall of Fame encyclopedia. Even though the encyclopedia has been released, we are constantly updating it. Right now we have about 450 pages and we're adding in some more pages. So Radio Lady at bellsouth.net is another email address for me. Or you can call me 678-851-1399. But the National Black Radio Hall of Fame is mostly what I work on, even though I have some things going on with WERD. I'm trying to make sure the history is covered while I'm here. So that's my spiel.
All right, thank you so much. All right, Teddy.
Yes, I can be reached at 404 area code 358-8349. That's 404-358-8349. If you know anyone that needs mortgage assistance with their home, that number is 404-842-4600. That's 404-842-4600. Now, you can reach me all over social media. Just make sure you spell my last name correctly. It's Astin, not Austin. Astin. My email address is Teddy, Teddy, at toughact.net, toughact.net. The link to my book is toughact.net. For TLA Real Estate Consulting, you can reach me at Teddy at TLA Real Estate Consulting. TLA Real Estate.net. That's Teddy at TLA Real Estate.net or www.tlarealestate.net. So you can reach me on Facebook. If you Google my name, you're going to see several interviews for TLA and for Tough Act and my book. So I'm not hard to find. I may be the easiest person to find on this entire panel.
Okay, we want to thank our.
And if I may, just one last thing. I also wanted to thank the Auburn Avenue Research Library for coordinating this panel and putting it together. And big shouts out to Auburn Avenue Research Library.
All right, thank you so much. We want to thank our guests again, Marshall Washington George, Jamal Ackman, Wendy F. Williams, David Linton, and Teddy Aston. Also, we're going to say thanks to Auburn Avenue Research Library for this exceptional panel of guests, a wonderful topic for America's Black radio, and to you, the viewer, finally beginning to gain knowledge of more community excellence through radio and its historians, such as all the guests present today. Thanks again to Auburn Avenue Research Library, collecting, researching, and writing the Black Diaspora Conference. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.